Oh, hello, it's Phillip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers. I'm talking about an interesting book. There's a picture of it here, a purple cover. Acquisition Finance by Tom Speechley. It's published by Tottle, and it deals very much with acquisition finance prior to the economic downturn that we started experiencing in the autumn of 2008. It was written earlier than that, and it's a book which I've given the title Great Guide to Funding Successful Transactions in Changing Times. And that particular review has appeared on many internet sites. The problem we've got really now is that things have changed quite dramatically since this book was published. The review, when I wrote it, of course, was prior to September 2008. And what I said at the time was that the acquisition finance industry continues to gain importance in our global community and is seen by many as one of the great success stories of UK financial services. And Tom Speechley endeavours with the guide to obviously produce a statement of how successful the services were. Obviously he's talking specifically about acquisition finance, which we'll look at in a bit more detail. The book is primarily about transactions which make up a cornerstone of English law, and Mr. Speechley is actually writing as a financial advisor rather than as a lawyer. His definition of acquisition finance is the following. It's of any transaction of a business that is financed through funds raised specifically to effect the acquisition. Now you think at the moment, with the problems we have with the availability of money, that this may be not the right time to discuss this sort of thing. Well, it is, because obviously the economy has to move forward. What Speechley then goes on to do is he explains that there are two distinct categories of what we can call acquisition finance transactions. Those that have a financial sponsor effecting the acquisition, and those that have an existing corporate business making the acquisition. Clearly, of course, the funding from business is what has been affected with the economic downturn. I then come into a subhead, which is leveraged corporate buyouts and leveraged corporate acquisitions, because we've got buyouts and we've got acquisitions that we look at. The book, in fact, is aimed primarily at the buyout, but Speechley does consider the principles which are still relevant to the acquisition. What I found helpful about the book is that each step is explained and examined by the author in his text, and that is actually very helpful. There's an excellent and detailed glossary which I found useful. It starts off the book, which is always a good sign, because obviously some of the terms are going to be quite unfamiliar to people. There are 13 chapters in the book. It's not a particularly heavy book, but it covers the following areas. Obviously there's an introduction, an overview. Then we look about at acquisitions, the financing, the equity investment, debt, second liens and so forth. Then it moves on to multi-jurisdiction buyouts and so forth. Obviously you can look at these in much more detail when you read the book. What Speechley says about his work is this: it's essentially a commercial perspective that he's offering, which draws on his experiences as a transactional lawyer, as a temp banker, and subsequently as a principal in private equity. So his legal background has come in to play with a finely tuned series of explanations, and the structure of the book, in my view, covers complexity and serious money making with equal vigour. I like the detailed index at the back and the detailed chapter structures at the beginning of the book, which made it much easier to navigate through. Mr. Speechley says it's not a legal guide, but it will be obviously of equal use and interest, because the principles are obviously applicable to general financial advisors and lawyers. So Speechley on acquisition finance is going to go from strength to strength, I think, in the next few years as the economic situation improves. He's actually now located in Dubai, which is an interesting area in itself to have as a base, and it therefore illustrates just how global financial acquisitions are actually now being conducted in the sort of first decade of this century. It's a very forward-looking book in my view as well, because what it's doing is a subject which is going to dominate fiscal issues certainly for a long period of time to come, especially as we restructure the way in which corporate governance goes. And once, as I say, we get out of the downturn, we'll see where we go. I'm going to look forward to the next edition, and it's going to be very curious to see how he might approach it, because obviously we need to see how, and I said it in the review, how the subprime element actually settles down, and we hope certainly that there will be a little bit more sense in the financial sector as the new technologies come online and we see more of the digital revolution. So thank you very much indeed. It's an interesting statement of what the current position is, and we look forward to an update. Thank you very much. Bye bye.